Hello, everybody. So we're getting into 16.3, looking at finding the area of circles and sectors. All right, the first thing we're going to look at is the formula for finding just the area of the entire circle. So go ahead and copy this and we'll dig into it. Okay, so first things first, comparing area to circumference. If you guys remember, the circumference was the distance around a circle's perimeter. All right, an area is all of the inside. What is the square, I guess, footage of the circle? All right, so what does this all take up? And the way we find that is using the simple formula area equals pi r squared. All right, and just like when we were doing circumference, area, all we need is the radius of the circle, and we can plug it into our little formula and get it. Just remember, the radius is a segment that goes from the center of the circle to the edge. All right, and just like before, the diameter, the radius is half of it. Okay, so if they ever give you the diameter, say this thing's 10, we would know our radius was 5. Okay, so that's what we're going to start out with, and then eventually we're going to get into finding the area of sectors of a circle, which are just kind of parts or pieces of a circle. Okay, but first let's try this out. Okay, so go ahead and copy this and we'll find the area of this circle. All right, so first things first, let's write our formula again. Area equals pi r squared. All right, and on this problem, first thing to realize is they are not giving us the radius, they're giving us the diameter of the circle. All right, so if the diameter is 14, we know our radius is going to be half that, 7. All right, so that's what we need to plug in. Area equals pi 7 squared. All right, and we just need to type that into our calculator. If you're using a GeoGebra, which this is the first year I've ever used this one. I'm actually really starting to like this calculator a lot because it's really simple. So when we go to type this in, pi 7 squared, there's your pi button again. Okay, 7. And then if you guys look right here, this is your dedicated squaring button. Okay, so that's the one to pick. All right, so pi 7 squared, and there we are. We have 153.93. We're going to round one decimal place to the tenths, just like always. So that 3 means this 9 stays a 9. So 153.9. Okay, so area equals 153.9. Here's the thing about when it comes to finding the area. First of all, our units are in inches, but because we are finding the area, it's actually in inches squared. All right. So that's just it's a little formality, I guess. But whenever you're finding the area of something, it's in units squared, inches squared, feet squared, or whatever it happens to be. Okay, and just to kind of understand, that's what all of this inside is. If I needed to, fill this thing up with, like, let's say I needed to paint this, I would need to paint this entire circle with 153.9 inches squared of paint. I guess is one way of thinking about it. Okay, so yeah, let's take a look at one that's doing basically the opposite. This one is giving us the area of our circle, and it's asking us to find the radius. All right, so copy this and we'll try it out. Okay, so first things first, again, let's write out the formula. Area equals pi r squared. This time we know the area, so I'm going to plug in 113.1. All right, equals pi r squared. And what we're looking to solve for is r, right? Okay, here's the thing. We have two things we need to get rid of. We need to get rid of our pi and our power of 2. All right, but we need to make sure we do it in the correct order. I guess the first thing we need to get rid of is pi because it's being multiplied, and then we'll get rid of that power of 2. We need to do it one at a time. Okay, so first thing, let's go ahead. Pi is being multiplied, so we'll get rid of it by dividing both sides by pi. All right, so in your calculator, let's go ahead and first do this. I mean, on the right, we have r squared, but let's go ahead and type this into our calculator. So 113.1 divided by pi. Okay, make sure to clear your calculator every time. So 113.1 divided by pi. Okay, and then from here, now, I guess, by the way, it looks like we're getting 36.00. So we'll say 36.0. sorry. And then from here, undoing squaring with square rooting, right? Square rooting both sides. All right. And on this one, you might know the square root of 36 is 6, but here's the thing. I just want to make sure our calculator gives us that. So here's what we got. The next thing is I'm just going to go ahead and say, I'm just curious how this will work on this calculator. So square root, let's see, I'm figuring this out in real time here. So square root of, here's the big thing, answer. That's the button I was looking for this whole time. If I click square root and then answer, what it's doing, if you guys notice, is it's plugging that exact number into my square root, which is what we want to do. I don't want you to type it out when you do the square root thing. I want you to use the answer key. And if you have your own personal calculator, it also has an answer key. Okay, so I'm getting 6.00. So I'm going to round to the tenths like I normally do. So this is going to round to just 6.0. Okay, and there's the radius. I'm just going to flip it around. So the radius equals 6.0, our units, centimeters. Okay, so yeah, that's using the area formula. We're going to kind of move on from here and get into the sector stuff because that's really the main thing that this lesson, I guess, gets into. Okay, so let's shift gears. We're going to look at finding the area of a sector. If you guys notice before you copy it, area of a sector equals the measure of an arc divided by 360 times pi r squared. This is a lot like finding the arc lengths. All right, that formula, the only difference is instead of 2 pi r, we have pi r squared in this spot. Okay, so yeah, go ahead and copy this, get the circle and everything, and I'll explain a little more. Okay, so the easiest way to think about finding the area of a sector of a circle, a sector you can think of as just a slice of a circle. This right here would be a sector. All right, so to just find the area of this piece or this slice of a circle, that's what this formula is for. Okay, so you know the area formula found us the area of the entire circle. This is just finding the area of a piece of the circle. Okay, so yeah, just a little reminder. First thing is the measure of the arc that you know is part of the sector. Usually they're going to give you that measure as a central angle, and we'll have to remember, okay, that means the measure of the arc is the same thing. All right, and then obviously we need the radius of the circle for this part. Okay, so still just two things to plug in. Let's try it out. Okay, so in this example, we're going to find the area of both sectors formed by the angle UTV. So go ahead and copy this circle, get the directions, and we'll try it. Okay, so I noticed that they're giving me the measure of this central angle right here. So I know that that means the measure of this arc is 70 degrees. I'm going to start with finding the area of just this piece right here, this sector. All right. So, by the way, when you name a sector, you name it by basically just going around the sector. Okay. So I'm going to call this thing sector UTV. All right. So sector UTV equals. All right. Just a little reminder. All right. We have the measure of the angle divided by 360 times pi r squared. Okay. The measure of our arc is 70 degrees. Divided by 360. Well, I usually don't use the degree symbols when I plug these numbers in. Okay, times pi r squared, the radius of our circle we can see is given to us. So pi 8 squared. Okay, and this is basically what we need to plug into our calculator. So let's try it out. So 70 divided by 360 pi 8 squared. Okay, make sure you delete everything in your calculator. Okay, so 70 divided by 360 times pi 8 squared. All right, and I'm getting 39.09. So that 9 is going to round that 0 up to a 1. So 39.1. Okay, so sector UTV equals 39.1. All right, and we're talking about square units. Normally we would put that. There's no units here. I wish, actually, let's add units to this thing. Let's say it's in inches. Okay, just so we can practice saying, okay, that's 39.1 inches squared. Okay, so there's one of our answers. Okay, the next thing they want us to find is the area of this sector, the green one right here. All right, so there's actually a couple ways we could do this. We could find the area of the entire circle and then subtract this area of the sector we just found. That'd be one way of doing it. Or we can just use the sector formula on this green thing. So that's what I'm going to do. So yeah, let's go and do it. I'm going to name this green sector, sector U. How many letters do we want in there? I guess we need to use the 4 letters, USVT, just going around it. All right, so sector USVT. Okay, just make sure you're going around the sector as you name it. Okay, so yeah, the measure of this arc though, what is it? Okay, well the question is what's the measure of this angle? Right? Well, we know that this part's 70 and we know the whole circle is 360, right? All right, so I guess maybe it's better to just focus on the whole circle itself. If this part's 70, we can get the rest of the circle by taking 360, subtracting 70, okay, which is going to give us 290 degrees, right? Right? So there it is, 290. And really, that's the only additional work that needs to be done here. So now we know the measure of the arc. So 290 divided by 360. And by the way, if we want to divide this just to show they're 2 different problems, okay, times pi r squared. Our radius is still 8, so pi 8 squared. Okay, so the only thing that changed was the measure of the arc, right? Because the arc of this sector was different than the arc of this one, right? So let's type this in. So clearing this out, 290 divided by 360 times pi 8 squared. Okay, and I'm getting 161.96. So this 6 is going to round this 9 up to a 10, which is actually going to round this up to a 2. So a 162.0 is how I want to write this. Okay, so I'm going to write it out first so I don't forget. 162.0. And again, our units are inches, so inches squared. Okay, and we can say sector USVT. Okay, really quick, I'm just curious. If I were to find the area of this whole thing and subtract this, I should get basically the same answer. I just want to try it real quick. Finding the area of this pi r squared is really easy, right? Pi 8 squared. So let's see what the area of the entire circle is. Pi 8 squared, it's 201.06. So if I subtract 39.1 from that, minus 39.1, see, this is weird. This does this sometimes. I don't know why. I guess I need to click back on this and then subtract 39.1. Just double checking that's what that was. All right, and I'm getting 161.96, which again would round to a 162. So I just want to point out that'd be another way of finding this. All right, getting the whole area and just subtracting this sector to get the rest of it. All right, so multiple ways of doing these problems, but we're practicing the sector formula. That's why I wanted to do it this way. Okay, so I'm gonna have you guys try basically the same idea on this problem. Go ahead and find the area of both regions or both sectors. I would start with this green one, the small one, and then find the orange, the big one. Okay, so go ahead, do those 2 things, and we'll see what happens. Okay, so that green sector, I'd call sector APB. Equals the measure of the arc, which I can see here is 75, right? If the central angle is 75, this is 75. Okay, so 75 divided by 360 times pi r squared. The radius on this circle is a 10. Okay, so there it is, 75 divided by 360 pi 10 squared. 75 divided by 360 times pi 10 squared. All right, and I'm getting 65.44, so that 4 doesn't round up, it stays a 4, so 65.4. All right, this one's in inches again, so inches squared. right? Just something to point out. If you're not getting the same number as me, if you're not getting 65.4, be really careful with how you're typing this in your calculator. If you have your own calculator, it might require parentheses maybe. You might have to kind of experiment and figure out the quirks of your own personal calculator. Ask me questions on that if you have them. Okay, so let's go ahead and do it for the next sector. I'm going to call it sector ACBP. All right. And by the way, the naming of this, just do your best. I'm not terribly worried about it. Okay, so the only thing I need to figure out is what is the measure of this arc right here. Well, I know the whole circle is 360, so I can subtract 75, and I can get what that is. So let's see, 360. I don't want to mess this up. Minus 75, 285. Okay, so 285 degrees, and there it is. So 285 divided by 360 times pi, and the radius is still 10 squared. So let's see what we get. 285 divided by 360 times, don't forget to press times, pi 10 squared, 248.70. So 248.7. All right, and then don't forget inches squared. Okay, so that's sector area. Actually, a really simple idea. On the last part of this lesson is going to be us doing just kind of the reverse here. All right, on this problem, they're going to give us the area of the sector, and they're going to ask us to find the area of the entire circle. All right, so go ahead and copy this. We'll make some sense out of it. Okay, so here's the first thing to realize. It says find the area of our circle, circle V. All right, sometimes it's represented this way. Okay, we want to find the area of the entire circle. Well, if you guys remember, to find the area of a circle, it's just pi r squared, right? All we need to figure out is the radius of our circle. They're not giving us the radius though. So that is our goal. Here's what we know though. We know the area of this sector is 35, and we know that the measure of the arc is 40 degrees. So let's plug that information into our sector area formula. All right. So I'm just going to go and do it. We know the area of the sector is 35. So 35 equals the measure of our arc, which is 40 degrees, over 360 times pi r squared, where the radius is what we are trying to figure out. Okay, so that is our goal. We need to solve for r in this. All right, so there's a few things we need to get rid of. The first thing we need to get rid of is this fraction. All right, if you guys remember, get rid of the fractions, just multiply by the reciprocal, excuse me. So I'm going to multiply this thing by 360 over 40. Okay, and I also need to do it to this side. All right, just remember the 35 gets divided by the numerator and then divided by the denominator. So 35 times 360 divided by 40, I'm getting 315. Okay, over on the right, these cancel out if you want to cross them out, and I'm left with the pi r squared. Okay, and basically what we have now is a problem just like that example we did towards the beginning. We're just solving for r, and we have to get rid of these two things. First thing is getting rid of pi by dividing. Okay, this is where, let's go to our calculator in this thing. So we have 315 divided by pi. Okay, and then just kind of going back. So those are gone. We have r squared equals this step here. Looks like we're getting 100.267. I don't want you to round this. I just want you to write some of the numbers. All right, because remember, we're going to use the answer button on our next step. So 100.267. I'm just going to write out some numbers here. Okay, but again, I don't want you to round this because we're not going to be typing this number in. I want to get the most exact answer as I can. Okay, so from here, getting rid of squaring by square rooting. All right, so that gives us r on the right. Over here, we're going to take the square root of this exact answer. All right, so going to our next step, I'm going to hit the square root button. Okay, actually, I need to click this. Okay, then square root. So let me start this over. Okay, so hitting the square root button and then the answer button, which is going to plug that exact number in there. And this is going to give me my most exact answer. So a 10.01. So now we'll round this thing to a 10.0. Okay, so I guess the easiest way to think about it is I don't want you guys rounding until the very last step when you get what radius is. Okay, so our radius is 10.0. And that's technically in meters. Okay, but be careful, be tempting to think, sweet, we're done, we found the radius. No, ultimately we want to find the area. Okay, so now let's go one more step and let's plug this into our area. So area equals pi 10.0 squared. So pi r squared. All right, now I'm going to delete. Actually, I'm not going to delete it. I'm going to see if it still gives me my right answer. So pi 10.0 squared. Okay, I'm getting 314.15. So that's going to round that up to a 2. So 314.2. Okay, and we're talking about meters, so meters squared. Okay, so yeah, something interesting, 3.14159, this is pi, just times 100. Just something I sort of noticed, or not times 1,000, sorry. Yeah, so I'm gonna have you guys try one last problem on your own. Okay, same idea. We're gonna find the area of this entire circle. All right, and to do that, you need to first figure out the radius of the circle by plugging this information into the sector area formula. Okay, so start with that, plug this information in, and then solve for r. And then after that, you can plug it into the area formula and find the whole thing. Okay, try it out. Okay, so the area of our sector is 114.37. So the area of our sector equals the measure of the arc, 85, divided by 360 times pi r squared. And again, I just want everyone to realize, we are using this formula right here, but we know the area of the sector. That's why we're plugging a number in for that spot, just so we're all on the same page here. All right, so there it is. We're solving for r. First thing is getting rid of the fraction. So I'm going to do this pretty quick. So dividing by 360 over 85. Okay, grabbing my calculator. So let's see, 214.37 times 360 equals, then divided by 85. I'm getting 907.92. Over here, these are gone. I have pi r squared. Now I can start solving for r, first dividing by pi. All right, so let's go ahead and do this. I guess I'll do this on the GeoGebra calculator so everybody can see it. All right, so 907.92 divided by pi. So 288.999. I'm just going to write some of this out. Remember, I'm not rounding this because I'm not actually going to type this into my calculator. I'm going to use the answer button. Okay, that's what r squared equals. Now we can solve for r by taking the square root. All right, so back to my calculator. I'm going to take the square root. So clicking on the next input is what this thing requires. Square root of my answer. And I'm getting a 16.99. Now I'll round this thing. So the 9 is going to round up. It's going to round this up to a 17.0. Okay, so there's my radius, but that's not what they're asking for. They're asking for the area of the whole circle. So one last step. I know that area equals pi r, which we figured out was 17.0 squared. All right, so I'm just going to do this in my personal calculator. Pi 17.0 squared, and we're getting 907.92. Something interesting, and I should have caught this earlier. I noticed that's that exact same number right there. All right. Something that we could have done, we could have realized that this formula right here represents area, and area equals 907.92. We could have gotten our answer on this step right there if we would have realized, or if I would have realized that that's our area. So we kind of worked a little harder instead of smarter, okay, but we still got it. There's the area, and I bet you if we switch back to our last problem, the area of our circle, 315, we probably had it right there, huh? Yeah. Here's the thing. This was rounded, so we got a slightly different answer. Okay, so that's kind of interesting to know. So this is actually probably, actually, I don't know. I think this is more of an exact answer. Okay, this rounding, all of the rounding we did on our way down kind of screwed it up a little bit. So that's just something kind of interesting to know. All right, guys. So yeah, that's finding the area and of the entire circle and of sectors. I'll see you in class. Bye-bye.